Hello, everyone, and welcome back. For those who this is your first time here, my name is Fleetus Poston, and today I'd like you to join me for our Saturday morning coffee break where we talk about many different topics. Today, I want to talk about AI. So grab your coffee because we need to talk about something that is quietly creeping into your organization. And no, it's not another zero-day or ransomware variant. It's your employees' use of AI. Not the sanctioned, secured, vendor vetted AI your company approved 6 months ago. I'm talking about the quick win tools, the browser based LLMs, the personal API keys, the I just need to help writing this script moments that turn into persistent invisible risk, known as shadow AI, or you can just call it shadow IT. And here's the uncomfortable truth. While it feels like a productivity boost, it's actually becoming a balance sheet problem. So let's unpack this. The illusion of free. Most shadow AI starts the same way. It's convenient. An employee pastes a chunk of code into a public LLM to troubleshoot faster. A marketing analyst uploads customer segmentation data to refine its messaging. A project manager uses it to summarize internal documentations for a presentation. There's no procurement cycles, no security review, and no legal sign off. It feels free. But free in an enterprise environment is almost always a deferred cost because what's actually happening behind the scenes is sensitive data is leaving your controlled environment. Intellectual property is being exposed to third party models. Regulatory boundaries are being crossed without an audit trail. And decisions are being influenced by tools outside of your governance frameworks. And none of this shows up in your financial systems yet. So, what is the hidden financial drain of AI? Let's translate this into a language your CFO and board actually care about. Shadow AI is not a technical issue, it's an unbooked liability. So, here's where the costs begin to surface. The first is data leakage, it's a competitive loss. When proprietary data enters an unsanctioned LLM, you lose control over how that data is stored, processed, or even potentially reused. Even if the vendor claims isolation, the risk exposure still exists. Think about the many data breaches you and I hear about day in and day out. In a highly competitive industry, such as finance, retail, even in manufacturing, even partial leakage can erode differentials. This is not a security concern. It's a revenue erosion risk. I'll say that again. It's not just a risk that your security team and your CISO have to care about. Your CFO needs to be aware. Next, regulatory noncompliance will equal fines and legal exposure. If an employee is putting regulated data, PHI, PII, ITAR, EAR, or even your company's financial records into tools that are not compliant with frameworks such as GDPR, HIPAA, CMMC, or any other emerging AI regulations, you're accumulating silent violations. You don't get fined when the data is entered. You get fined when it's discovered. And by then, it's multiplied across months of usage. Now for the CISO's concern, an incident response cost. If shadow AI contributes to a breach or even a suspected exposure, you now have to do forensics investigations, legal consultations, customer notifications, and potential credit monitoring services that's going to cost your organizations tens of thousands, if not upwards of hundreds of thousands, as well as the brand damage that you have to do. This is where harmless AI patterns turn into potential $1 million events. Next is the audit and compliance failures. Imagine explaining to an auditor that, yes, we have strict data governance policies, but we don't actually know where our data has been sent via AI tools. That gap becomes a finding. Findings become remediation costs, and repeated findings start impacting your organization's credibility, potential failure of your certifications, and your ability to do business in regulated markets. Not something your CFO or CEO wants to hear about. Next is your evaluation impact. Here's the piece many leaders underestimate. In an M&A scenario or an investor due diligence, data governance maturity is increasingly tied to your evaluation. If shadow AI practices reveal weak controls over data handling and AI use, it signals an operational risk to the investor. Operational risk lowers your evaluation multiple times over and over. So those free tools, they can absolutely cost you real dollars when it matters most. So Fleetus, what can I do? Why are my traditional controls failing? Think about this with me. We've already blocked risky apps and we monitor traffic. It's not enough in 2026. Shadow AI is slipping through as it's often allowed over HTTPS traffic. Many tools don't require installation, just Chrome or another browser. And API usage can be masked through legitimate workflows. Your employees may not perceive it as risky behavior. It's no longer 2012. It's not the same shadow IT. This is embedded workload level risk that blends into your normal operations, and your existing controls were not designed for it. So that leads to a cultural problem. Let's be honest. Your employees are not trying to create risk. They're trying to be more efficient. They're trying to solve problems faster, write better emails, automate repetitive tasks, generate insights quickly. Ideation is important. In many cases, they're outperforming expectations because of these AI tools. So when organizations respond with blanket bans, it rarely works, if ever. It drives behavior further underground, which makes risk even harder to detect and even more expensive when they actually surface. So we must reframe our conversations from IT issue to financial risk. If you want leadership's attention, you have to change how it's framed. Stop calling it shadow AI usage, unauthorized tools, policy violations. Start calling it unmanaged financial risk. Because once you quantify it, even at a directional level, the conversation changes. Instead of employees are using AI we haven't approved, we can now say we have an unmonitored data exposure channel that can introduce regulatory fines, increased incident cost, and our evaluation into the millions of dollars. This will get your CFO's attention, your board's decision, or even itch the CEO's interest to slow down and assess the usage of AI inside of their organization. What qualifications can we look at? You don't need perfect data to start. You need directional clarity. For example, estimate how many employees are using unsanctioned AI apps. If you have tools, go pull that metric, that data. Identify the types of data that are likely being shared. Map this against regulatory exposure, your GDPR, your CCPA, or any industry-specific rulings that you're trying to abide by. And then model a breach or compliance scenario using industry averages. Even a simple model can tell a compelling story. For example, if 15% of your workforce is using unsanctioned AI tools weekly, and just 5% of that involves sensitive data, we have a reoccurring exposure vector that can translate to X dollars in risk annually. Now you're speaking the language of leadership. For those who've heard me speak many times, we have to be bilingual. The first language we speak is business. Then we speak tech. So how do we turn shadow AI into a governed asset? Here's the shift that needs to happen. You're not going to eliminate AI usage. You absorb and then you govern it, which means you provide sanctioned, secure AI tools that meet your users' needs. You implement data loss prevention policies specific for AI interactions. Then you need to monitor all of your API usage and outbound data patterns. This will allow you to create a clear, realistic usage guideline, not theoretical policies, thus allowing you to train employees on what is and is not acceptable to share. Most importantly, it means aligning security, legal, compliance, and finance around the shared responsibility and risk of AI. Because it's not just your security operations center's problem. It's not just a governance risk and compliance problem. It's a business risk that needs to be documented. So here's our leadership moment this Saturday morning. This is one of those moments where organizations can either get ahead or pay later. Shadow AI is still early enough that many companies haven't fully felt the consequences, but the patterns are already there. The behaviors are widespread, and the regulatory environment is tightening quickly. So the organizations that act now will reduce their exposure before it becomes visible. They'll be able to build trust with their customers and their regulators while maintaining strong valuation positions if and when you need to sell or raise new series funding. Additionally, organizations who enable AI safely instead of just reacting to it. Does that one ring a bell? The ones that don't, they'll eventually quantify the cost, but only after it already hits their books. So here's my final thought as you're sipping your coffee this morning. The most dangerous risk in cybersecurity are rarely the loud ones. They're quiet, normalized behaviors that no one challenges because they've seen harmless. Shadow, exactly what I'm talking about here. It's not setting off alarms. It's not crashing your systems. It's just happening and accumulating. So the next time someone says it's just a free AI tool, you might want to ask, free for who? Because somewhere between convenience and control, there's a cost. And it's starting to add up. So thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And remember, stay safe and stay secure, everyone.